believe, based off of this seal here, it says that it stemmed from Murdle.com, a Wordle clone. I was not familiar with it until I saw it in my local, was it Books A Million or Barnes & Noble? I can't remember. I believe it was Barnes & Noble, though. And once I saw it, I figured I would grab it and give it a go. So yeah, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and sit back, relax, and attempt to solve a few of these Myrtle puzzles here. So I'll go ahead and flip open our book here. You can see that in the contents we have how to solve, degree of difficulty, then elementary, occult medium, hard-boiled, and impossible. Then we also have the hints and the solutions, as well as some acknowledgments at the end. So, briefly, I will review the how to solve puzzles here with us, just for those of you who are unfamiliar, which I'm sure might be a few of you, because I was unfamiliar until I wasn't, basically, for lack of a better term. So, how to solve. We've got Welcome to Murdle, Volume 1, the official publication of the case files of the world's greatest mystery-solving mind, Deductive Logico. Unlike other memoirs of the crime-fighting life, these Myrtles are not mere tales, but puzzles for you to solve, and all you need to crack these cases is a sharp pencil, which we've got, and an even sharper mind, which we will find out if we've got. To prove it, let's review Deductive Logico's very first case, which he cracked as a junior at Deduction College. The student body president had been murdered, and Logico was certain one of 3 people had done it. We've got Mayor Honey, who is 6 feet tall. Not too bad, Mr. Honey. Left-handed, just like myself. Hazel eyes and light brown hair. I might be Mayor Honey, I'm not gonna lie. Anyways, it says he knows where the bodies are buried, and he makes sure they always vote for him. Then we've got Dean Glaucus, the dean of some such-and-such department at Deduction College. What does he do? Well, he handles the money for one. 5'6", right-handed, light brown eyes, and light brown hair. Then we've got Chancellor Tuscany. As the head of Deduction College, she has deduced exactly how much rich parents are willing to pay to get their children a degree in logic. She is 5'5", left-handed, green eyes, and blonde hair. Young Logico also knew that each of them was in one of these places and had one of these weapons. We've got the stadium, the bookstore, and Old Main. Stadium is outdoors, the bookstore and Old Main are indoors. And for weapons we have a sharp pencil, a heavy backpack, and a graduation cord. The pencil and the cord lightweight, and the backpack heavyweight. Now, Logico knew that he could not make assumptions just from reading these descriptions. Sometimes mayors wore heavy backpacks, and sometimes teachers went to the stadium. No, the way to figure out who had what where was by studying the clues and the evidence. These were the facts he knew to be absolutely, perfectly true. Whoever was in the stadium was right-handed. The suspect with the sharp pencil resented the person at Old Main. The suspect with a graduation cord had beautiful hazel eyes. Dean Glaucus seemed to carry a lot of logic textbooks around, and the body was found next to peeling a paint. And finally, he pulled out his detective's notebook and meticulously drew a grid, labeling each column and row with a picture representing each of the suspects' weapons and locations. The locations were listed twice, once on top and once on the side, so that every square represented a unique potential pairing. This tool, the deduction grid, was a powerful technology taught at Deduction College. It could help clarify your thoughts and identify the possible conclusions you could make. But never before had it been used to solve a murder. In Deduction College, they apply logic only to the realm of the purely abstract. Just noticed the book was a bit out of frame there, I'm sorry. If all x's and y's and all y's are z's, that kind of thing. what Logico was doing here was new, exciting, and dangerous. Once he drew his deduction grid, he had arrived at his favorite part. The the deducing. He went down the list of clues and put each of them into his grid. The first clue is whoever was in the stadium was right-handed. According to Logico's notes on the suspects, only Dean Glaucus was right-handed. Therefore, Dean Glaucus was at the stadium. So, Dean Glaucus' icon is here. The stadium is here. You get the check mark there. And then, of course, Xing out all the other possibilities, since this is surefire. So far and so forth. So basically, you just use the clues to fill out your grid, and it should leave you with... I apologize. It should just leave you with the solution here, but this part is important. This last clue is special. It doesn't tell you who has what weapon where. It tells you about the murder itself. By consulting his notes, Logico knew that this clue meant the murder had been committed in Old Main because the description of Old Main mentions peeling paint. Therefore, since Mayor Honey was the suspect in Old Main, Mayor Honey must have committed the crime. And over here it just says, good luck, gumshoe. So, let's begin to start. I will be completely honest, I am not super good at these. I never really was, but I do enjoy giving them a solid try, so I'm going to stick with elementary for now. If you guys like this type of thing, of course, I'd be more than happy to do more in the future, but Exhibit A here has some things that we may or may not need for our puzzle, so we will take a look later. Now, as you can see here, I've already done a little bit. I've done the first two puzzles, or I apologize, I guess the first three. So we will be going into puzzle number 4, the last train to murder. The description for that reads, once he got back to the mainland, deductive Logico took a train. Unfortunately, somebody else took the life of the conductor. Now the train was racing down the tracks, and nobody knew what to do except Logico. He knew that he had to crack the case. So, with that out of the way, let's take a look at our suspects here. We've got Vice President Mauve, a Vice President of TechCo Futures. If she asks you to step into her metaverse, politely decline. And she is 5'8", right-handed, with dark brown eyes and black hair. We also have Chef Aubergine. It is said that she once killed her husband, cooked him, and then served him at her restaurant. Lovely things to say in an ASMR video. It's not true, thankfully, but just the fact that it's said about her tells you something. She is 5'2", right-handed, with blue eyes and blonde hair. Finally, we have Philosopher Bone, a dashing, dark philosopher who pioneered the ethical theory that he is not responsible for his actions, but he should be paid for them. He is 5'1", right-handed, with light brown eyes, and he is bald. For locations, we have the locomotive, which is indoors. The deafening sound of the steam engine prevents deductive Logico, that's us, from being able to think. We have the caboose, also indoors. The back of the train lets you see where you're leaving and what you're leaving behind. Finally, we have the roof, which is outdoors. What with the wind and the smoke from the smokestack, it's hard to get your bearings up here. Now for weapons, we have an imported Italian knife, which is lightweight. It looks priceless, and that's technically true because it's worthless. We've got leather luggage, which is heavyweight. This luggage is hideous. The leather looked way better on the cow. And we have a rolled up newspaper with a crowbar inside. You think that's just a newspaper, but then, wham, let's take a very careful look at our clues and our evidence and see what we can deduce here. So, we have a page from the Wow, stumbled over that real bad, huh? We have a page from the classifieds was found near the heat of a steam engine. A page from the classifieds. Does that tell us anything? We have the vice president, a chef, and a philosopher. Now, the classifieds was found near the heat of a steam engine. So we know that the classifieds is definitely in the locomotive because it mentions the deafening sound of the steam engine down here. However, I'm not entirely sure what the classifieds means, so I'm going to skip that and move down one. So, Chef Aubergine and the person who brought leather luggage had a history together. Interesting. So let's read the chef here again. It is said that she once killed her husband, cooked him, and then served him at her restaurant. It's not true, but the fact that it's said about her tells you it's something. Not getting a ton from that either, I don't think, at least. Quickly readjust here. The tallest suspect never set foot in the caboose. So we had 5, 8, 5-2, and 5-1. So Vice President Mauve was the tallest suspect. And we know that Vice President Mauve was never in the caboose. So we can find the caboose, which is the train car, and we can look for Vice President Mauve here, which is the first icon here, and we can X out the caboose. We know that they were never at the caboose. But what we also know is Philosopher Bone was seen wandering around outdoors. So, Philosopher Boone was outdoors. The only spot that it could possibly be is the roof, because the roof is the only outdoor location. So, Philosopher Bone, with the glasses and mustache icon, we know for sure was on the roof. So I will give that a big check mark there. And I will also quickly X out the other locations there. So, we know that Vice President Mauve was not in the locomotive or the roof based on the X's that we have, which can only mean that Detective Mauve was in the caboose. They were not in the locomotive or the roof, so they were at the caboose. And that leaves only one possible place that Chef Aubergine could be, which is the locomotive. So we will checkbox that, X that, and we now know the location for each of the suspects. Vice President Mauve was in the caboose, Chef Aubergine was in the locomotive, and Philosopher Bone was on the roof. So, what else do we know? We know that the conductor had been stabbed to death. So, the conductor had been stabbed. The conductor would of course be in the locomotive. So, we know that they were probably killed by Chef Aubergine here with a knife because they were stabbed. And you're not going to get stabbed with a suitcase or even a crowbar wrapped in newspaper. So, I think it's safe to assume that whoever was in the locomotive had the knife, which means it was Chef Aubergine, and the knife was absolutely in the locomotive. That much we can confirm. So, between that, we have a pretty clear-cut case of who did it, but I'd like to figure out who else had what, if possible. Chef Aubergine and the person who brought leather luggage had a history together. See, there is something I'm not picking up on, but I fear that is okay. What am I missing here? We've got something else that we can deduct. Let me quickly read over everything one last time. We got back to the mainland. I took a train. Unfortunately, somebody else took the life of the conductor. Now the train was racing down the tracks, and nobody knew what to do. A vice president of Tech Futures, if she asks you to step into her metaverse, politely decline. It is said that she once killed her husband, cooked him, and then served him at a restaurant. It's not true, but just the fact that it's said about her tells you something. A dashing dark philosopher who pioneered the ethical theory that he is not responsible for his actions, but he should be paid for them. Who could possibly have what? Well, we absolutely know the where was the locomotive. We also know that it was definitely an imported Italian knife. And who was in the locomotive? It was, of course, Chef Aubergine. Now, really quickly, I'm gonna flip to the back here. There are hints for each puzzle before we check the solution. And before I lock in my solution, I want to make sure I check that hint. For puzzle number 4. Wow, these get crazy towards the end, don't they? Hints. Logico received a strange message via telegraph. Once he had cracked the Morse code, he saw that it said, "Ley lines reveal. Stop. VP Mauve. Stop. Beside steam engine. Stop." Vice President Mauve beside the steam engine. Ley lines reveal. I'm not entirely sure what that means, so I will go ahead and check for the solution. Puzzle number 4. It was Chef Aubergine with an imported Italian knife in the caboose, not in the locomotive. Chef Aubergine stood up angrily, and she was just about to say, "I should have cooked you, Detective Logico," when the train, having had no conductor this entire time, flew off the tracks into a gorge. So let's see where we went wrong here. We knew that it was Chef Aubergine, and we knew it was an imported Italian knife. But it was the locomotive, not the caboose. Or it was the caboose, not the locomotive, sorry. Chef Aubergine and the person who brought leather ley. Okay. Well, we know that Chef Aubergine and the knife were both in the caboose now. So we can go ahead and flip these. So Chef Aubergine was in the caboose, which means the knife was in the caboose. Which means classifieds was found near the heat of a steam engine. The classifieds. I assume that means VP Mauve, because she would have classified information as the VP. So, Vice President Mauve was in the locomotive. We have that now. I assume we might just have to deduce that the chef and the Vice President have history together. And then we can have the Vice President. The chef had the knife, that makes sense. So the person who brought luggage knew the chef. So we'll have Vice President Mauve with the luggage. And we know that she was here, which means the luggage was there. Which means Philosopher Bone was on the roof with the newspaper crowbar. So, that was a Murdle puzzle there. I am a little upset that I couldn't figure it out, but again, I am getting better, or trying to get better at these type of things. I'm not much of a logic puzzle guy, but, trying to do my part here to not only entertain you guys, but try and get a little bit more intelligent at the same time, work on my deductive reasoning and such. It's always fun to be able to read something like this. So, now that you guys are a little bit more familiar with the puzzle system, definitely drop a comment if you'd like for me to try another one. It would be really cool to nail it the next time. Maybe take a little more time and really read all of my clues just a little bit deeper. And I always forget that it is a deductive reasoning game, so you might just have to infer something, see it through, and see if you can make it make sense. So that'll be my strategy for the next time. But until then, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I really appreciate all the support that I've been receiving. Definitely drop a like on the video and a comment if you would like more in the future. You guys have been wonderful. I have been Anything ASMR, and I will definitely catch you guys very, very soon. Good day and good night.